Monday, Monday, Monday. We're here, huh? We're doing it again. We made it. Pretty happy for us, really. I'm pretty stoked. Let's see if the YouTube is awake. There we go. Yeah. Happy Monday. It's a big day. It's Iowa today. And yeah, I'm a little nervous. I don't know about you guys, but I am definitely a little nervous. Let me just get that situated there. All right. Boom. I hope everyone is doing amazing. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope you did something cool. Maybe you watched the Super Bowl. I used it as an excuse to meet up with friends at a bar. I mean, that's really all I did. Me and my fiance went to this place one of her friends works at, and we just kind of hung out for a while. I did catch an amazing sporting event yesterday, but I'm referring to the Pens versus Caps game, an amazing hockey game. Man, that is one of the most beautiful rivals in professional sports, in my humble opinion. Of course, I'm biased because I'm a hockey guy, but yeah, it was a fantastic matchup yesterday, the Pens and the Caps. Pens pulled it out. Pens won this one, but Caps will be back. It was a hell of a game. But anyway, maybe you saw the halftime show and you were like, oh my God. Maybe you saw Mike Bloomberg's campaign ad. That was actually the only time I had a visceral reaction to the entire thing. Like I was vaguely paying attention to the game. I was like, that was okay. I thought the first half was kind of like, Second half also kind of like, it got a little more exciting, whatever. But when I saw Mike Bloomberg's ad, I was like, are you kidding me? What? That was the only time I had any reaction to what was going on the television screen. And people were looking at me like, because other people, they cared about the game. So they were watching the game and, they were rooting for one team or the other. Maybe they were from San Francisco or Kansas City, whatever. I didn't really care. So I was just kind of there as an excuse to hang out with friends on a Sunday. And the Bloomberg ad was the only time I had a real reaction. So like some people looked over, they were like, oh, that quiet dude had a reaction to something all of a sudden. He's like, he didn't react to any of the game. He just reacted to that thing. He doesn't like this Bloomberg guy because he has thoughts, because he's a person. But look, check this out, guys. Chris Matthews trending on Twitter right now. Why is Chris Matthews trending on Twitter? Because he's melting down over Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders might win, and people might get health care. They might be able to send their kids to college. They might have living wages. We might do something about climate change. And Chris Matthews is very upset about this. Really, Chris Matthews. Well, let's go to now. First of all, he's right there next to Claire McCaskill, someone who knows a lot about winning. Claire McCaskill. They asked for her opinion on things because she knows how to win. But anyway, so here's Chris Matthews melting down over the idea. And we're going to go through this. Ridiculous. So tired that I am getting mildly tired just knowing that it's coming. But here's Chris Matthews recycling a talking point from 4 years ago about how Bernie is going to be the next McGovern. We're going to listen to it first. And yeah, here it goes.
What are my thoughts? I'm not happy. I'm not happy with this field. I think they got to find a candidate for president that can beat Trump.
And you don't think anybody in this field
I'm looking. I'm still looking.
Still looking.
What's the problem?
Obvious problems. They're all problems. Bernie Sanders is not going to be president of the United States. Okay.
What kind of reporter is that first? I mean, he sounds like somebody at a bar at 2 a.m. Like, I don't look at any of the candidates, man. Well, what are some of the problems? They're all problems. They're all problems, man. They're all problems. And they're all like, okay, well, you were asked a specific question. And news is the industry in which you labor. So maybe you could say they're all problems. All right, let's go. He's saying Bernie Sanders isn't going to be president.
Okay. I went back to the 72 race. I was a young volunteer.
Here it is.
I was working for a senator from Utah at the time. I've got to tell you, it feels a lot like it. A lot of giddiness, a lot of excitement, a thrill about this guy.
You're saying a lot like McGovern?
Well, exactly, because he was very excited. He excited the party completely, blew away a really good candidate like Muskie, a really good guy, blew him right out of the water because he had some issues. Now, analytically, I think a couple things have happened. One is Warren was riding high. I thought she was going to sweep through everything. I should first two easily and just keep going. She was the one candidate I thought could do that. What happened? She got a lot of scrutiny. A lot. You don't want a lot of scrutiny, and she got a lot of it. Does this stuff add up? The Medicare for all, the free college, all that stuff got killed. And guess who's going to get it now? Bernie.
No. People started getting away from Elizabeth Warren because she wasn't consistent on any of those issues. And here's something that Chris Matthews knows. Voters respond to strength. They respond to conviction. So when you're waffling about what you stand for every other week, that translates into weakness. And then people turn away from a certain candidate. That's why Warren's numbers have plummeted since she pivoted away from Medicare for all. All right. Let's keep watching.
Bernie's going to get it now. Bernie's going to ride high, and he's finally going to get scrutiny about his whole life, his ideology, his whole life, who did he root for all his life. Who is this guy ideologically? It's not just the nice, good stuff like health care. Why does he say the stuff he does about Maduro and people like that? Why does he say Denmark one week and then somebody else? I mean, people got to figure out who the guy is. Yeah. I think I know because I've dealt with these guys most of my adult life. They're usually the guys at the card tables at an anti-war rally. There'll be there some old guy with some old literature from this socialist party or that, trying to sell it, trying to latch on to the anti-war movement. There's always...
He sounds drunk. I'm not trying to be funny. Like, he sounds drunk. Oh, I know this guy. I mean, we got to know who he is. We got to know who he is. I know who he is. He's like that guy, the guy at the card table I saw last week. Guy was like, hey, man, you want to buy this timeshare? And I gave him $50. There wasn't a timeshare at all. It was just a coupon for a free sandwich at Subway. And I got hackled by that guy. And I'm pretty sure he had a socialist button on. And that's what they do, man. That's what he's saying Denmark this week. And then another week he's saying Sweden. And then he's saying Finland. And then he's saying, oh, man, countries. Oh, boy, he's that guy. That's who he is. People are going to know who he is. I don't like it. They're all problems, man. They're all problems. I love one. Is it last call yet? Is it, you don't want to serve me? You don't want to serve me? You don't want to, this is America. See, this is the problem. This is why if Bernie's president, this is the problem. This is my liberty.
These guys like that. And they're usually, as Howard Fine once said, non-negotiable demands, yelling up at the administration building during the anti-war movement. I know them, but I think the country's going to get to know them. I think we got a problem. We'll see. But, nobody's going to say it tonight. They're all going to be cheering. Good old Bernie. I think he's going to win big tonight. Real big.
If you're in the same time zone as me, and you haven't had breakfast yet, you're welcome. I just gave you your word salad from Chris Matthews. Enjoy it. Hope it tasted okay. Okay. So the main thesis of his rambling, which is exactly what it was that Bernie's going to be the next McGovern. McGovern, of course, who went on to lose in a brutal landslide to Richard Nixon. This has been a talking point since 2016. A lot of the people who voted for Hillary in the primary, not because they thought she was a better candidate, but because they thought Bernie was going to be the McGovern, that was the rationale. So Chris Matthews is recycling this talking point that has been around for 4 years. And it is an absolute false equivalency for a number of reasons. So let's break it down. All right. First of all, McGovern and Bernie, why do you get the comparison in the first place? Okay, well, McGovern was very outspoken against the Vietnam War at the time. He was very anti-war, and he was to the left of kind of the consensus of the Democratic Party at the time. So is Bernie. They have that in common. He also excited a lot of people during the primary because of that. Bernie's doing the same thing. All right. So those are two things they have in common. And that's where you get the comparison. Those two things that they have in common. They're exciting people, and they're to the left of the Democratic Party for the most part. Well, back then, the Democratic Party wasn't the fringe right party it is now. So, Bernie's far to the left of the Democratic establishment, whereas McGovern, probably not quite as much as far as the Overton window is concerned. But those are the two things they have in common. All right, cool. And that's pretty much where it ends. So here's why it's absolutely ridiculous to compare Bernie to McGovern, or to imply that Bernie would be the next McGovern. So first of all, let's look at the opposition. Part of the reason McGovern lost the way he did was not because he was too far left. It was because the opposition, Richard Nixon. Now, I know it's sometimes hard to recall this because of what Richard Nixon went on to become. But in 1972, Richard Nixon was very popular. He was popular across the aisle, too. There was a group called Democrats for Richard Nixon, as a matter of fact, that consisted of some elected officials. He was a very popular politician, and also the Vietnam War was going on. We'll get to that in a second. But so when you're saying that Bernie's going to be the next McGovern, you're implying that Donald Trump has the popularity and political astuteness of Richard Nixon, which is just overwhelmingly not the case. I mean, first of all, Donald Trump was never that popular in comparison, compared to Richard Nixon. Donald Trump, keep in mind, didn't even win the popular vote in 2016. Hillary Clinton did. He's not a very popular president. His numbers have never been all that high. And he does not have the political savvy of a Richard Nixon in 1972. He knows PR, sure. And keep in mind, when I say this, don't get me wrong, I'm not implying that Trump's guaranteed to lose. I'm not implying that at all. In fact, I think if the candidate's not Bernie Sanders, Trump wins again. But the fact that Trump is that competitive of a contender is not a reflection on Trump's strength as a candidate. It's a reflection on how weak the opposition is. So that's one stark difference there. I mean, do you really think, keep in mind, Nixon won everything except for D.C. and Massachusetts. Do you really think, even if, like, let's just say for hypothetical, and just being strictly objective here, let's say the nominee is Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the worst nominee. Let's say it's Joe Biden. Even in that scenario, do you really think Donald Trump would win California? Or Donald Trump would win New York? Do you really think that would happen? Even if the Democrats put up the weakest nominee imaginable. Do you really think? I don't. So right there, there's a false equivalency right there. Because Trump and Nixon, there's no way. It's actually, in many ways, quite the opposite. Nixon was a machine at that point. Which brings us to our next point, the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a huge international conflict on the top of people's minds. And the country was very divided because of that. A lot of people were responding to McGovern because of how against the war he was. People were responding to that message. Of course, there was a huge anti-war movement. But they were also kind of looking for leadership. And when you have a popular incumbent during a time of international conflict, it's really hard to beat that popular incumbent, no matter who you are. So Nixon also had that working in his favor. Despite opposition to the war, the fact that he was a popular incumbent and people were trusting in his leadership in a very divided country. So we don't have something, the equivalent of that going on right now. We still have conflict. We're still at war, obviously. But we don't have a Vietnam in people's faces, big conflict going on in comparison. The closest we have is Iraq, and this isn't 2004. So, or the closest we had, rather, Iraq, and this isn't 2004. So right there, those are two very glaring differences. Just looking at the state of the world and looking at the opposition, two very glaring differences that make this McGovern-Bernie analogy a huge false equivalency. And it has been for years. Another thing here, look at the kind of overall general consensus of the populace. Donald Trump blew up the GOP, and people liked him for it. Why did they like him for it? Because we live in an anti-establishment time. Back then, comparatively speaking, it was not an anti-establishment time. Now, there was a huge anti-establishment movement. There were the hippies. There was the war protests. There was the counterculture. And I'm not trying to diminish any of that. In fact, I celebrate all that stuff. I love a lot of the music. I love a lot of the literature. I'm glad that that Vietnam was stopped, obviously. I celebrate all that stuff. But I'm just saying the consensus amidst the general American, we're in a heavy anti-establishment time. Whereas back then, you had huge union membership. And unions were supported by Democrats and Republicans in many cases. There were pro-union Republicans out there. Unions would endorse Republicans, and working class was generally Democrat with some crossover. And when did the crossover happen? When you had somebody as overwhelmingly popular as Richard Nixon was at the time. So the fact that McGovern really went against the grain in the party actually probably hurt him more than helped him. Whereas now we're in an anti-establishment time. So being an outsider actually helps somebody other than hurts him. If we weren't in an anti-establishment time, Trump would have looked a little more like McGovern in 2016, or he at least would have lost, because the GOP, the base of the GOP, would have been so disenfranchised that he blew up the party, metaphorically, that they wouldn't vote for him, especially since their option was a centrist, at best, centrist Democrat, Hillary Clinton. And when I say at best, I mean because she's actually right-wing when you think about it. In any other country, any other democratic country in the world, she'd be considered right-wing. But, you know, we'll say centrist to use the U.S. lingo. So, comparatively speaking, it is an anti-establishment time compared to back then. And you had, stronger unions. You had a different type of style of working class. All that is gone now. So you have people more than ever before amidst the general populace that are completely against the status quo, and they know it's broken. So the overall climate of the world is completely different. There are some similarities, sure. There are totally some similarities. But overall, it's a much different climate. Also, that brings me to another point, climate change. Climate change, on a lot of people's minds, Donald Trump doesn't even think it's a thing. Bernie Sanders, only person with a real plan for it. So you have all of these stark differences where to draw that equivalency is just completely false. And, I'm curious if you're watching this after the fact and you're watching this as a recorded segment, I'd be curious to go into the comment section, because you're going to see some comments that disagree with me. And I bet you pretty much all of them are just going to say, I'm too young to understand, or something like that. Because so far, every time people disagree with these points, whether it's me or someone else, they just say, well, you weren't alive, so you don't know. And that's all they have. So I encourage you in the comment sections, if you disagree with my assessment, explain why, and explain how Donald Trump is the same as a Richard Nixon and would be able to win that way. Explain how my assessment of the Republicans and the Democrats is wrong. Explain all that instead of just saying, well, you weren't around then. Because no, I wasn't around then. But, I don't think that's a very strong argument. All right. So Chris Matthews melting down over a very, very tired talking point that has been, I think, disproved many times over. All right. So here's something. Focus on the Chris's today for whatever reason. Focus on the Chris's. We got a heavy focus on the Chris's. And here's another Chris. This is Chris Wallace. And Chris Wallace, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much just ended Amy Klobuchar's campaign. So let's see what he did. This happened over the weekend on Fox, of all places. Check this out. I'm grabbing this from my buddy Johnny Graz. Shout out to Johnny Graz.
A new issue has come up in the last few days I want to ask you about. Back in 2003, you were the top prosecutor for Hennepin County in Minnesota, and your office put a 16-year-old boy in prison for life for the shooting of a young girl. You've campaigned on how this shows that you were tough on crime. but just in the last few days, I want to put this up on the screen, a year-long Associated Press investigation has raised new questions about whether that young man was wrongfully convicted. They found police offered cash to potential witnesses and relied on testimony from jailhouse informants who got reduced sentences. Senator, did you know, when you were the prosecutor, did you know about any of that? And should this man's case be reopened?
Well, justice must be done, Chris. And just to put it in some context, this was an 11-year-old girl named Taisha Edwards. She was doing her homework at her kitchen table, and a bullet went through the wall, and she died. And it was a tragic case. It was a big deal within the African-American community. And our focus was on bringing the people to justice and doing justice for her family. So what happened was 3 people were convicted, if I could just finish.
But Senator...
She's trying to deflect, okay? And you know, I want to watch the whole thing all the way through, but just so you guys notice, and I'm sure you already noticed, you don't need me to say it, but she's trying to deflect here. She's trying to focus on the emotion of the situation, the tragedy of what happened, instead of what Chris Wallace is getting at, which is you convicted a person without ample evidence. You likely wrongfully convicted a person. How much accountability do you take for this? That's what he's really getting at. She's trying to deflect by talking about the tragedy of the situation. All right.
And now
I mean, we know. Let me just say, we know it was a bad case. The question is whether this young man did it, and this AP investigation indicates that other people who were there said he didn't do it, and that some of the witnesses that were relied on were very questionable. You were the head prosecutor. Did you know? And if you didn't, shouldn't you have known?
There actually were 2 trials in this case, Chris. One was after I had left the office.
But he was convicted in the case when you were the prosecutor.
I know, could I just...
She's trying to deflect so many ways, because he's specifically asking, did you know this was faulty evidence? Did you know how questionable this was? Did you know? Because if you did know, why did you still do what you did and prosecute this guy? If you didn't know, well, that was at least gross negligence, don't you think? She's trying to deflect. Well, something happened after I was already gone. How sad was it? An 11-year-old girl died. She cannot answer this question.
If I could just answer, my view as someone that has worked with the Innocence Project for years is that if there is new evidence, it must come forward. It must come forward, and it must be considered immediately by the court. The job of a prosecutor is to do justice, and that means to me, convict the guilty, protect the innocent. Do your job without fear of favor.
But Senator, you're not answering my question. Senator, you're not answering my question. Did you know about the fact that there was this questionable evidence that the police were coming up with?
I didn't know about this new evidence. No, I didn't know about this new evidence until I saw this report. I couldn't have. I haven't been.
That's not what he's asking. He's not asking, did you know about this new evidence that came? He's asking if at the time, in the moment, did you not realize how questionable all of this was? And if you didn't, why did you not? Why did you fail this hard at your job? That's what he's asking. And you see, she can't answer it. She has no answer.
Been in the office for 12 years.
But I was wondering, when you were in the office, did you know about this questionable evidence? The reason I'm asking you is, as I'm sure you well know now, there are a number of African-American groups in Minnesota who are calling for you to suspend your campaign until this is cleared up. And according to national polls, you're below 1% in African-American support. You're not going to win the Democratic nomination if you have such little support from the minority community.
Well, I think what you've seen all across the country is that when people get to know me, I do well. And
I haven't seen that. Have you seen that? I haven't seen that. Anyway.
It's on me. I've got to go out there and get to know people. And in my case, let's look at Iowa. 2 prominent African-American legislators have endorsed me, are out campaigning for me right this weekend. At home, I've always enjoyed and have gotten strong support within the African-American community. I've been a leader on issues with the Somali community in my home state. And it's on me to go across the country and make the case for my agenda.
Shout out to Johnny Graz and his joke, which I'm going to read here. This is a good one. Chris Wallace exposes Amy Klobuchar for the racist, self-promoting sociopath that she is, knowing full well he'll be getting a stapler to the forehead at some unnamed future date. Good one, Johnny. I like that a lot, buddy. Let the record show she could not answer that question. Let the record show. And I wish Chris Wallace, which by the way, hey, I don't agree with Chris Wallace on everything, but he nailed it here. He asked her, and he kept saying, you're not answering the question. The one thing I wish he would have done, I wish he would have, before he got off the topic, which he kind of, moved on from it a little bit because he knew she wasn't going to answer the question. I wish he would have said, let the record show she could not answer my question. He said specifically, did you know when you acted on this case, when you prosecuted this child, did you know that this was a very faulty case, that the evidence was very flimsy? Did you know this? She's like, well, I didn't know about the new evidence that came out later. No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying when you were something happened after I left the office. I'm saying when you were there. She could not answer that question. She just couldn't. She couldn't answer it. Good night, Amy Klobuchar. Good night. It's over. I mean, if this clip continues to go, and it's already been circulating a lot, if it continues to go viral, which I hope it does, please share this clip. Amy Klobuchar, it's over for her. I mean, it's pretty much over already. But Chris Wallace just, yeah. And she could not answer. I wish he would have just said that. Let the record show she couldn't answer the question. Let the record show she could not answer that question. Man, it's like, man, you really gotta. I mean, how much of a program politician can you be? I mean, that was almost. In a very dark way, it was almost impressive just how good she was. And completely, she wouldn't answer it because she has no answer. Because in reality, what probably happened was a tragedy happened. It was a very tragic thing that happened. An 11-year-old girl got shot. And they needed somebody to take the rap for that. And they needed it quick. So they rushed things through. And they were able to lean on the inherent racism in our justice system and the inherent discrimination in our justice system. Just like what happened with the Central Park Five over in New York City. Just like what happened with that murder case in Chicago where an innocent black guy did 30 years until they finally found out he didn't do it. And you see this like ridiculous evidence. Just like what can happen in small communities when you're a little bit different than the social norm, like the West Memphis Three. Now those kids weren't bad; they were white kids, but still, the kind of theme is the same. That when you're an outsider, you can just kind of take that blame, and that's why Amy Klobuchar, she has no answer for Chris Wallace, no answer for him. She can't answer it. She tried every method of deflection that she had in her toolkit. Well, something happened after I was gone. I'm talking about when you were there. Well, I didn't know about the new evidence. I'm not asking about the new evidence. I'm asking when you were there and you got this flimsy evidence. Did you realize it? Well, what happened was really sad. An 11-year-old girl. I know it was sad. That's not my question. Bravo to Chris Wallace for not letting her off the hook. Bravo. He did good there. And I wish before he got off of it and said, you don't have a lot of support from African American, where she was able to be like, well, I have this and this. I wish you would have been like, let the record show she couldn't answer. She refused to answer my question. Do you think this would make a good president? Does anyone see this and think, oh, yeah, she'll solve climate change? Amy Klobuchar. All right, Chris Wallace ended Amy Klobuchar's campaign. All right, cool. Let's move on. So here's something that's actually pretty cool. Well, we'll do something cool first, and then we'll do some kind of not so great news. So this is some good environmental news. Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez bill would outlaw fracking by 2025. Not soon enough. Fracking needs to be outlawed today, but still good to see a bill out there that gets rid of it. Sanders' Ocasio-Cortez bill would outlaw fracking by 2025. A bill introduced last week by Senator Bernie Sanders that Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez helped craft would ban fracking nationwide by 2025. By the way, this one was shared by Jack. Thank you very much for this article, Jack. According to his newly unveiled text. The legislation would immediately prevent federal agencies from issuing federal permits for expanding fracking, new pipelines, new natural gas or oil export terminals, and other gas and oil infrastructure. A House version of the legislation is being spearheaded by Ocasio-Cortez and Darren Soto in Florida. By February 2021, permits would be revoked for wells where fracking takes place and that are within 2,500 feet of a home, school, or other inhabited structure. They should have never been built in the first place. The wells would be required to stop operations, which is good because they never should have been built in the first place. Fracking for oil and natural gas will become illegal on all onshore and offshore land in the United States by January 1st, 2025. Boom, baby. Keep in mind what fracking is. Fracking is where we drill deep into the earth to extract natural gas. It causes earthquakes. It poisons water wells. It is barely a drop in the bucket to our energy needs anyway. Most of that energy does not stay domestic. It gets shipped overseas. So all it does is pad the pockets of CEOs. That's all fracking does. It pads the pockets of CEOs. When a Democrat, I'm looking at you, Hillary Clinton, uses that tired talking point of, well, I don't like fracking, but we need it in case we have an energy emergency, that is a straight up lie. That energy is not for our use domestically. That is a straight up lie. And Hillary Clinton, by the way, promoted fracking all around the country. And here you got Bernie Sanders, AOC, they want to get rid of it. You know who else is cool with fracking? Joe Biden, totally cool with fracking. And pretty much every other Democratic candidate out there, cool with fracking. Who's not cool with fracking? AOC ain't cool with fracking. Bernie Sanders ain't cool with fracking. Fracking is a danger to our water supply. It's a danger to the air we breathe. It has resulted in more earthquakes, and it's highly explosive. To top it all off, it's contributing to climate change, Sanders said in the statement. If we are serious about clean air and drinking water, if we are serious about combating climate change, the only safe and sane way to move forward is to ban fracking nationwide. Here's what AOC had to say. The science is clear. Fracking is a leading contributor to our climate emergency. It is destroying our land. It is destroying our water, and it is wreaking havoc on our community's health. So it's good to see this. I mean, obviously, at the moment, we're not going to go super far because something like this would not be signed by Donald Trump, obviously. But hopefully this is something we can look forward to in the future. And with a President Sanders, we know if something like this comes to his desk, he's going to sign it. We should have never been fracking. It should have never happened. The proper scientific homework was not done in advance. Since it's been done, the science community overwhelmingly is against fracking. They know how dangerous it is. They know that the benefit, quote unquote, which is not even a benefit, it just pads the pockets of CEOs. But the potential energy benefit does not even come close to what the cost is. And it's time for a Green New Deal. It's time to reinvest the way we do our energy. It's time to get off of fossil fuels completely, period. All right. So that's a little bit of good news that something like that's floating around. Hopefully it moves forward. Thank you for sharing that, Jack. All right. So Joe shares this. And this is kind of disturbing. Kind of disturbing. So we talk a lot about digital rights on this show. We talk about issues of net neutrality, about municipal broadband, and we talk about the kind of weird situation that we're in our contemporary landscape, where technology has gone past the law. The law has not caught up to technology yet. So we're trying to figure out how to best orchestrate the modern day town square, which is online, and it's via social media. Well, how do we allow that to operate efficiently and with the best interests of society taken into account? And unfortunately, some people have come to the conclusion that we should just let Facebook and Twitter and Google and YouTube decide what is and isn't free speech. Something they're completely unqualified to do. That's not what their field is. They're just not qualified to do that. It's a ridiculous sentiment. The analogy I like to make is if we allowed these people to referee a sports game, people would freak out. If we just decided, hey, we're just going to let Silicon Valley referee the Super Bowl. If we would have decided that yesterday, be like, hey, yeah, they have no qualifications in this, but we're going to let them referee the Super Bowl because we just want to. The nation would have gone insane. People would be protesting in the streets. But we want them to decide what is and isn't free speech. And a lot of people don't even bat an eye at that. They're like, yeah, sure, that's what could possibly go wrong. So here's something that's happening. This is from the Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness. They're going to do what they can to help. YouTube bans some misleading or doctored political videos. YouTube said it will ban misleading or doctored videos that could impact elections. That's not vague at all. Misleading or doctored videos. What does that mean? What qualifies something as misleading? What qualifies something as doctored necessarily? I mean, even that can be interpreted many ways. Doctor could just mean you only play part of a clip. You don't play the whole thing for whatever reason. Or you know, I mean, the video streaming site said in a blog post Monday, or remove videos that spread misinformation such as deepfakes. All right, well, that's at least something specific. Deepfakes are those things where it's like the person's mouth is moving and you're supposed to think it's them, but it's not actually them. Or patently false information, such as clips that report a living candidate is dead. It will also target videos that attempt to mislead the public about the voting or election process. Well, here we're getting a little vague again. What do you mean mislead the public? All right. We've increased our efforts to make YouTube a more reliable source for news and information, as well as an open platform for healthy political discourse, said Leslie Miller, Vice President of YouTube's Government Affairs and Public Policy. YouTube, which belongs to Google, has become a central advertising platform for candidates and for voters seeking election information. But that has also brought bad actors who may willfully try to manipulate voters with incorrect information about hot-button political issues or even realistic-looking videos manipulated to give a false impression of a politician they oppose. That only happens on YouTube? Those bad actors only happen on YouTube? How about CNN, where they deliberately lie about how much Medicare for All costs because their advertisers are Big Pharma? Is that not a bad actor who's misinforming the American public? How about over on MSNBC, where you have Rhodes Scholars like Rachel Maddow pretend that they don't understand net neutrality? Basically, net neutrality makes the internet a Title II, which means it has to be treated like a utility and flows like flowing water or a telephone call. And internet traffic cannot be discriminated against. Not that hard to understand. And Rachel Maddow pretends that she doesn't understand this because her paycheck comes from Comcast, a company that doesn't want net neutrality. Is that not a bad actor? How about Fox News, where they paint any type of social programs in the negative every opportunity they get? Because their job is to just carry out Rupert Murdoch's wet dream. Is that not a bad actor? How about NPR, where they genuflected? We listened to that clip last week. They genuflected the altar of Russiagate to distract from the point that our voting machines in Iowa, which we're dealing with that today as of the recording of this, and California are greatly, greatly flawed. But it's easy to distract people from a domestic flaw when you focus on an international boogeyman. Is that not a bad actor? Is that not misleading the American people? They take Koch money too, by the way. Are those not bad actors, the Koch brothers? I just named every cable network in the country, by the way. Every cable news network, which I put news in air quotes because it's not news. It just definitionally isn't news. It's corporate approved PR. That's what MSNBC does. That's what CNN does. That's what Fox News does. Are those not bad actors? But we need to worry about people on YouTube. That's the big thing, people on YouTube. And who's going to protect us from these bad actors on YouTube? Well, the employees at YouTube. They'll protect us from these bad faith actors. Last year, for instance, this is going back to this article. Last year, for instance, manipulated videos of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi slowed to make her appear to be drunkenly slowed to make her appear to be drunkenly slurring her words were spread widely on social media, including YouTube, which removed them. Yeah, because regular Nancy Pelosi sounds so stellar. If you ever heard Nancy Pelosi speak, you don't need to alter anything. She sounds absolutely ridiculous whenever she speaks. She just gives a platitude of nothing whenever she opens her mouth. You don't need to alter anything. Someone slowed it down to make her appear drunk. Who cares? Who cares? All right, so the dissemination of manipulated videos in particular has been a complicated topic in Silicon Valley headed into the president. Right, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a topic for Silicon Valley. That's the point. What does Silicon Valley have to do with that? What you do is you make these things public utilities so that they can be operated as such. And issues of free speech can be decided by free speech professionals. And the only time anything is censored or infringed upon is if it violates free speech laws, not if it violates some random code of conduct that can change in a whim. So this is, again, and this is a theme we talk about a lot on this show, you're giving power to these tech entities that they just shouldn't have. They have no business having it. But the only bad actors are on YouTube, too. Don't forget that. That's the big concern. The big concern for the spread of information, it's not the fact that you can just buy your way into an election like what Mike Bloomberg's doing. It's not the fact that we have a corporate media run by an elite group of corporations that make sure that their priority is above news and information, that make sure pleasing their advertisers, which is big oil, big pharma, pleasing them goes above informing you, the person. That's not the problem. That's no big deal. That doesn't hurt news and information for the public. What hurts news and information for the public is fake videos where Nancy Pelosi appears drunk. Are you hearing this? How backwards are our priorities? All right. So there you go, guys. All of our election information is going to be safe because YouTube is protecting us from videos of Nancy Pelosi appearing drunk. Imagine waking up in the morning and that logic sounds great to you. Imagine being like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they're all fine. You protect me from videos where Nancy Pelosi sounds drunk and I'm going to be an informed citizen and make my decisions. Imagine waking up and that logic sounds great to you. It's, wow, it's got to be something to walk around in that mind. All right. So one quick thing. Now I mentioned, we talk about this on the show where we talk about how Donald Trump has been given gift after gift after gift after gift after gift amidst this pretty nonsensical political theater impeachment show where they're not actually going after Trump's real crimes, his financial crimes. They're not even going after those because Democrats are complicit in that. And they've been giving him gift after gift after gift. They gave him billions more in a military budget than he even asked for. They opened the door for him to illegally assassinate General Soleimani and instigate war with Iran because that's what the military-industrial complex wants. They squashed the Save the Internet bill in the House or in the Senate so that he didn't even have to veto it. They gave him a new NAFTA. They gave him spying powers. They gave him the Patriot Act back. They took food stamps from 750,000 people. Just gift after gift after gift. Fast-track judges. Gift after gift after gift that they're giving Donald Trump. And this is Democrats and Republicans working together. Well, they gave him that new NAFTA. And I said, look, they just gave him a gift. And he's going to be able to use that on the campaign trail. Donald Trump is going to be able to go to the campaign trail and be like, hey, look, they're trying to impeach me, and look what I just got. I just got this awesome new trade deal through, and Democrats supported it. Some people said, Ron, that's not the case. No one really cares about the USMCA. Trump's not going to be able to use that on the campaign trail. Well, it's Iowa today, folks. And what did Donald Trump tweet this morning? He tweeted this: Republicans in Iowa, go out and caucus today. Your great trade deals with China, Mexico, Canada, Japan, South Korea, and more are done. Great times are coming after waiting for decades for our farmers, ranchers, manufacturers, and all. Nobody else could have pulled this off. Not useful for Trump on the campaign trail, huh? And Democrats gave him a new NAFTA. The House, Senate, they gave him a new NAFTA. And it was Democrats and Republicans alike that voted for it. Only a handful voted against it. The squad voted against it. Bernie Sanders voted against it. Ro Khanna voted for it. Tulsi Gabbard voted for it. Even Chuck Schumer voted against it, but I think he just did it for show. But nonetheless, it was a gift to Trump, and he will use it on the campaign trail. He already started. All right. So just pointing that out. So let me see what you guys are saying, and then we're going to hear from our usual Music Monday contributor. By the way, tour dates, I got them. This week it starts. The Progressive Comedy Tour for 2020 starts this week in Tucson, Arizona, February 8th, Tucson. Do not wait. Get your tickets now, ronplacone.com. February 29th, San Francisco, California. March 12th, Orlando, Florida. March 13th, Tampa, Florida. March 14th, Miami, Florida. And then going into April 9th, I'll be at Concord University. April 10th, I'll be in Pittsburgh, PA. Those shows are just me. April 24th, Seattle, Washington. April 25th, Portland, Oregon. May 14th, Indianapolis. May 15th, I just stumbled there. Detroit, Michigan. May 16th, Cleveland, Ohio. June 19th, Louisville, Kentucky. June 20th, Nashville, Tennessee. We got tickets for all of 2020. Go to ronplacone.com for those tickets. We're also going to Chicago, Milwaukee, New York, Boston, Portland, Maine, Burlington, Vermont, Minneapolis, Madison, Wisconsin, Atlanta. We should have tickets available soon. That's the only ticket link we're waiting on. Richmond, Virginia, Philadelphia, PA, Washington, D.C. Go to ronplacone.com for all those tickets. Find out when we're coming to a city near you. Let me see here. Sparky, Nixon won because he effectively ended Vietnam War. People didn't ever trust Nixon, but he ended war. But in 72, he was overwhelmingly popular. Nixon wasn't popular. People were tired of war. Yes, they were, but Nixon was popular. Dems were in complete disarray in 72. That's true, and some of them even supported Nixon. Everyone knew a casualty from Vietnam in 72. I believe you. Fox Wallace does better interviews than MSNBC Maddow. I agree. Cheryl Taylor, thank you very much. Nickname Tricky Dicky was way pre-Watergate. Look, I'm not saying everybody loved Richard Nixon. I'm not saying that. A lot of people didn't. I'm not saying he had overall consensus. But he was a lot more popular in 72 than Trump is now. And he did have some crossover appeal. He went on to, of course, we all know what happened. But he was definitely, yeah. Let's see. Sparky, when picture of Vietnamese girl running after napalm burned off her clothes on a national magazine, everyone said, F this war, thus 72 landslide. Because people trusted Nixon's leadership. Chris Wallace is an unapologetic, lifelong liberal. All right. Doesn't make it any better, but it turned out napalm, which hurt the girl, was dropped by South Vietnamese forces, but we didn't know that back then. Okay. One of them died. So Koch brother, not brothers. Oh, that's true. Let's see. Farmer suicide at an all-time high, says Kate. Really? All right. I don't know anything about that. Tracy O'Keefe, thank you very much for the Super Chat contribution in the pair that's lifting weights. And it says, keep it up. Thank you very much for that. Let's see. Balthazar, make sure Lucy Pack covers your Super Bowl. I am in the hands of Big Cat, which includes the Lucy Pack. All right. So Sparky, thank you for the super chat contribution. Cheryl, thank you for the super chat contribution. Kate, thank you for the super chat contribution. Tracy O'Keefe, thank you for the super chat contribution. Balthazar, thank you for the super chat contribution. If you want to support this show on the sustainability end, please do consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/Ron Placone for a Give What You Can level. You get all kinds of exclusive content, including my album. You just get that for its entirety. You can download it. You get a patrons only stream once a week. You get all that for a Give What You Can level. And you help me expand this show. We were able to start our Sounds of Revolution series. I want that to continue. Our first guest was Jill Stein. Check out that interview if you haven't already. I also want to start making mini docs on city-owned internet. We're almost there. We're so close. But I need your help to get there. Patreon.com/Ron Placone if you are so able. And we got another thing. Tony DeMayo, we'll see you in Chicago with Graham Elwood. Awesome, Tony DeMayo. See you there. That date is July 11th. Grab your ticket, Chicago. Can't wait to see you. Awesome. All right, guys. It is Music Monday. So you know what that means. We're going to hear from New Wave Vader before the show is over. So I will be, New Wave Vader will be with you shortly, and I will be back tomorrow. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's New Wave Vader. So stoked to be here. So today's Iowa, and, I'm going for Bernie Sanders. I talked to Savage Joy. She convinced me Bernie is the way to go. But today is Music Monday, so we're not going to forget the music component, which, by the way, first of all, shout out to Joe and Jack and Edwin for contributing today's articles. And also, Edwin suggested that in honor of 2020 kicking off today, that our Music Monday be Revolution by the Beatles. Now, a song that has been interpreted many different ways. Some people say that that is a song that kind of just perpetuates the status quo because they say you want a revolution, we all want to change the world. But really, I don't see it that way. Now, first of all, look, I got to be honest. Ron's a bigger Beatles fan than I am. I appreciate the Beatles now, but it took me a while. You know, when I was coming up, it was like nothing mattered before Strummer. The Clash, first and only band that ever mattered, other than Galaxy Glam, which, by the way, Galaxy Glam is coming to a city near you very soon. What is Galaxy Glam? It's my duo with Iggy Pop. But anyway, and I can shred again. My mechanical hand is working swimmingly. We've been having some great rehearsals. Galaxy Glam is going to rock your face off. But anyway, so people say like, well, it's actually a status quo song, but really you have to factor in the time in which it was written. It was written during a time of a lot of unrest, of a lot of violence that was happening. And I think it was kind of more of a contemporary response to that, of just saying, hey, we're going to be okay. And we know that we need change, but let's not start hurting each other. I think that was kind of more the message. So I think in a way, it still has the right intention. I think it's a great song. It's a killer Beatles tune. And hey, you say you want a revolution. Well, hey, guess what? Looks like we need a revolution. Galaxy Glam is going to be the revolution on the music side. You want the music revolution? We got that covered. Because you ain't never seen what me and Iggy are bringing. As far as the political revolution goes, let's all make it happen. This has been Music Monday. I've been New Wave Vader. You know the drill, the cat like meows a bunch, and that Ron guy tells people peace. But anyway, Vader says later.